You're listening to Radio Free Mike. Hi, and welcome to Radio Free Mike, the podcast about freedom and its discontents. My name is Michael Scott Moore, and today we're talking to Meghan Daum, an essayist and author who lives in LA but lost her home in the Eaton Fire in January, but also has a new book out called The CATASTROPHE Hour. She insists that the title is a coincidence because she named the book before the fires started, but we'll talk about that as well as some squirrely culture war topics that we normally try to avoid here at Radio Free Mike just because they're so squirrely. Meghan, welcome.
Thank you, Mike. It's great to be here.
So good to talk to you. You've got a new book out called The Catastrophe Hour. And what does that mean, The Catastrophe Hour?
It means many things. When I was conceiving of the book, I kind of had this concept in my head of the sort of moment that I was experiencing almost every late afternoon for the last several years, where I would be sort of sitting at my desk, sitting at home. I'm almost always at my desk when I'm at home. And it would be like 4 or 5 in the afternoon, and be looking out the window, and the sun would start to be going down in the sky. The lights, the colors would change outside. And I was just overcome with this moment of doom and this feeling that like life was over, and not even necessarily my life, but like the world was just there was more time behind me than in front of me. Mm-hmm. And, I just dubbed this the catastrophe hour. It just kind of felt like there was something happening at that time of the day. And then it also, if you extrapolate, it kind of became a metaphor for these times that we're in and this sort of overall historical period.
For sure. And we'll get to that. But so just to be sure, this is the hour of twilight. This is the hour of gloaming.
The gloaming.
The gloaming? Okay.
Well,
that's
it depends on the time.
Word, by the way.
Yes, it depends on the time of year, right? So in the winter, it would be sunset.
Right.
And in the summer, it would be just kind of when the afternoon starts to tip into early evening. I mean, I love that hour. I love the light at that hour.
But you started to feel it as a negative thing. Your body started to notice the light fading, and you started to get depressed, or what?
It wasn't really depression. It was more sadness and like a teeny bit of panic. Right.
That's interesting. And that only happened to be after a certain point in your life, and you think that was an intimation of mortality.
Well, so the essays in this book are collected from over the last 10 years. So they were more or less written between 2016 and 2024, and I guess that's 8 years. I was in my mid 40s when they start, and you can do the math and see where I am now. And yeah, I think they grapple with a lot of issues around aging, and not just that, but being of this particular generational cohort in this particular moment of creative history and in the creative economy, and just what it feels like to kind of have pursued a career and a certain kind of life for many decades, and then to have the rules change or the goalposts. I mean, I don't know if the goalposts have even been moved. They've just sort of been taken away, maybe. Right. So it's kind of wrestling with a lot of sort of metaphorical and literal ideas.
Right. And in your essays, you do like to write about like what's happening to people on a large scale. So in other words, you write about trends, and you write about the moment and stuff like that. And you write about Gen X, which is more or less our generation. I hate those labels, but they are useful. You argue in one of the essays that Generation X has been shafted more than other generations because the window of opportunity was narrower. So you think?
Well, I am with you in that these labels can be odious. I've also staked much of my career on them. So why quit now?
Why quit now?
Yeah, I mean, so many of, like I said, the rules have changed, and just the way you go about kind of figuring out how to make a career, not just in the creative world, by the way. I think a lot of people feel this way regardless of what they do. We just, it's like we became obsolete before we got old. I mean, this is a concept that I talked a lot about in my previous book, The Problem with Everything. And, I don't know about you, but I have like a lot of baby boomer friends, and they will often say like, "Ugh, I got out just in time. Like this is a great time to retire." And right. I'm really glad I don't have to sort of navigate what's going on and try to, still kind of keep myself relevant and hustle around and deal with this new landscape. And for us, I mean, I don't know about you, but I got to keep it going for the next 15 years at least.
I intend to die with my boots on. I also don't think that I don't know how to grasp some ideas like that. I have no idea what relevance means. I think especially a writer goes up and down according to when a certain book comes out. When I was in Somalia, I heard a really good interview with I think Peter O'Toole. He had just died, and the BBC went back. They went back and took something out of their archive, and Peter O'Toole said something about wishing, because he'd been an alcoholic, wishing that he had appreciated the rises and dips of his career, the peaks and valleys, as opposed to thinking that it had to be one upward climb. And I think the rises and dips of an actor's career are inevitably what made him drink.
I don't know. What do you drink more, when you're up or when you're down?
That was the implication.
That's the question.
Well, exactly.
A true alcoholic does not discriminate.
You don't care if you're a real alcoholic. Exactly. So that's why I thought that was sort of late wisdom from the late Peter O'Toole, and from that point of view, I haven't worried about it too much.
How one of my metrics for relevance, I guess, for lack of a better word, is the degree to which I feel I can be helpful to younger people. So, when I was in my 30s and 40s, I would teach, for instance, I teach graduate students, and I felt that they were able to come to me and ask me questions, and like, how did you do things when you were starting out? Or, what would you advise? What should I do here? And I was able to offer advice that was more or less germane to their situation. Like it wasn't completely from another planet. And somewhere along, in the last 10 years, that has stopped. Like there is nothing I can offer that has any bearing on anything that they're dealing with. And it's not just because I'm old. It's because I am from a different world.
Because the writing economy has changed in the meantime.
Yes. And the values have changed, and people's ambitions have changed, and goals, and, like just to cite just one minor example. I mean, it's like if teaching writing, I think we both taught at Columbia in the writing program. And, I was a student there in my 20s, and all anybody ever wanted was to get in the New Yorker, right? Like that was the goal. Like you could have one piece and then you could die, like whatever, it doesn't matter. And maybe Harper's, like that was number 2, And now, like I talk to students and I, talk to young people, and they're just like, why would I care about that? Like, the New Yorker is just another website. And, or they don't really, if they want to publish a book, maybe they're going to self-publish. They don't necessarily care about getting a book deal or having an agent, and maybe they're not wrong. Like that's what I've had to learn, is like, maybe we don't look down our nose at that stuff as much as we used to, and maybe there's value to what they're doing.
Well, I mean, getting rid of status chasing is certainly a good thing for any person or any generation. But you're right that, especially with younger people, there's an idea that one kind of writing is as good as another. So it's one thing to have status markers and to steer by that, but it's another thing to have a really good idea of what good, intelligent writing is. And in that sense, I don't think snobbery is such a bad thing, as long as your principles are good, because there are rules for good writing. Either a person thinks clearly on the page or they don't. And from that point of view, I think everyone needs to read Ezra Pound's book called The ABC of Reading, I think. There are ways to put things together in a way that actually makes clear sense. And I think some of those principles have gotten lost too.
Yes, and I don't know what the penalty is for losing those. Like, I see people on Substack, for instance, who are, have like some pretty interesting ideas, and I want to read their piece, and then it's like littered with not just copy editing problems, but just like grammatical problems and rhetorical problems and logic problems. And it goes on and on and on. And I think, oh, this would have been so great if it would have had an editor. I'm not enjoying this as much as I would otherwise. But then a lot of other readers just think it's completely fine. And they're not bothered by these things. So that's when I have to start checking myself.
Pound would have called it a social problem. He said that the order of thought itself, so the matter of thought itself, the language, was in the hands of the damned and the despised literati. So in other words, the way a society speaks to itself is formed in every generation by writers. And politicians, for example, can only follow along. Scientists can only follow along because everyone has to express themselves in words. And it's up to the writers to keep that tool, that language, to keep the language clean, not clean morally, not clean in the sense of sexual references or anything like that, but clean grammatically and logically.
Yes, that's powerful. I'm going to have to get, I will get this book. I confess I've never read it. I will put it on my library rebuild list.
It's from earlier Pound, by the way. I think it's from earlier in his career before he went crazy.
Okay, see, look what happened to him. He would have been on Substack.
Exactly. He did not keep the tools clean. He might have been on Substack towards the end of his life. I'm sorry to interrupt, but this has been a free preview of this episode. And the whole thing is open to paid subscribers to Radio Free Mike. So if you'd like to hear the rest, please hit the link in your show notes or in the body of the email we've sent you and upgrade your subscription over at Substack. Then you'll be able to listen to the full episode on any platform. Thanks for listening.